Welcome back to Eat Sleep Boxing Repeats YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Danny for another weekly preview. It's a stacked week this week. We're going from Las Vegas to Bethnal Green and back. So yeah, lots to cover. But yeah, great to have you here with me, Danny. How are you?
All good, mate. Glad to be doing it. Really enjoy these. Looking forward to discussing a lot of fights.
Yeah, lots to discuss. We'll start off with the big one. Canelo Golovkin. The trilogy. We're all looking forward to it. What are you expecting? I feel like I haven't really heard anyone saying they think Golovkin's going to win. I think most people are expecting Canelo to win. Do you think we are going to see as much of an entertaining fight in this fight as we did in the previous two fights? How do you think it's going to go down?
I think it definitely will be entertaining. As we sort of said in that when we chatted about before, I don't think it'll go the distance. I do think Canelo will stop Golovkin this time. Golovkin could potentially have some joy early. I think he's got a better jab than Canelo. Eddie Hearn's been sort of big to say this will be the most entertaining fight out of the three, and obviously he would say that, but I think it has the potential to be. I do think there is some animosity, maybe particularly on the side of Canelo.
Yeah.
And it would be a real statement to obviously be the only person to ever stop Golovkin. Which is, if you put a gun to my head, what I do ultimately think will happen potentially down the stretch. But I do think we're in for an entertaining fight while it's on.
Yeah. One other question from me, Daniel, on this one before we move on. There's lots to discuss this week. We both think Canelo's going to win. I think the majority of the boxing public think Canelo's going to win. Say Canelo does win. Golovkin, 40 years old, been around quite a while. Do you think he'll retire?
Oh, I don't know. It's a tricky one, like, because he's still, I know he's up at super middle now, but he was like consensus the best middleweight in the world, like at what, 41?
Yeah.
Just crazy. He's not. It's hard to know because like he's obviously have like renowned for how good his chin is. I don't really like. You've never seen him hurt to the head much, and like a really bad optic. I know his English isn't great, so it's hard to know if he sounds like punchy or anything. He's obviously got nothing left to prove in the sport. It's a thing, like, is he going to come back down and fight again at middleweight after, going up to super middle and cutting down again? It's obviously a massive payday what he's getting here. If he's beaten stopped by Canelo, I would say he probably would retire. He's been doing it a long time, really long amateur career as well. I'd say if he stopped in any way badly, he probably will call it, rather than go back down the middleweight campaign there again.
Yeah, I think it maybe obviously that depends what happens on Saturday. I just think that there are still big fights at middleweight, but whether he fancies those after another fight with Canelo is a different question. But we will see. We'll see what happens. It will be another big payday for Golovkin, and he might sign off. Yeah, we will see what happens on Saturday night. Moving swiftly on to the other main event this weekend. Denzel Bentley defends his British middleweight title against Marcus Morrison on Friday night at York Hall in Bethnal Green. Think it's fair to say Bentley's kind of been active recently. He had a great fight against Lawrence Adofia back in May. Won back his British title that he lost to Felix Cash. Marcus Morrison, on the other hand, I think it's fair to say he's had a bit of an up and down career. He's maybe lost to a couple of fighters you wouldn't expect him to lose to. He's been up against another good couple of fighters, Chris Eubank Jr., Zach Parker being those. What are your thoughts on this fight? What do you see happening?
I think you've sort of got to have Bentley a considerable favourite going into this. You mentioned the Eubank and Parker fights, and whilst they're both definitely good opponents, and you say both better than Denzel Bentley, Marcus Morrison was never in either of those fights for a minute really. Eubank took it as a sparring session. Could have stopped him. Sort of chose to go the rounds. Obviously, Zach Parker stopped him. Bentley's one of those fighters where I think like he'll cement himself as like sort of the best about in the British scene, but I don't ever really see him going too much further beyond that. But I would say even at that, he's still a level above Marcus Morrison. And I would expect he'd be disappointed if he didn't get Marcus Morrison out of there. I would imagine that's the goal for him, to try and make a statement that sort of way.
Yeah, 13 knockouts and 16 wins, and Marcus Morrison, as we know, has been stopped before. So yeah, I think that's most likely to happen. But we'll see. Not a bad York Hall main event on Friday night. People want to get warmed up ahead of the Canelo Golovkin fight, which takes place on Saturday or in the early hours of Sunday. Moving back to Las Vegas, credit where credit's due. Fantastic undercards on the Matchroom DAZN bill. We don't have time to cover absolutely everything, which we could do, so we're just going to cover a couple of fights. Jesse Rodriguez, the youngest world champion in boxing, and I think possibly the most active world champion in boxing as well, goes up against Israel Gonzalez. For those that don't know, Israel Gonzalez has faced Kawhi in the past. He's faced Chocolatito in the past. Lost against both of them, but a good fighter in his own right. Yeah, just Rodriguez, I think 16-0 now. Real kind of, can't really call him a prospect. He's a world champion, but someone who is kind of destined for very big things. I don't want to look past Gonzalez too much. I think it's a good test for Rodriguez, but do you think that we could see Rodriguez face the winner of Estrada and Chocolatito early next year? Do you think that's a possibility, Danny?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. That would be amazing. Jesse Rodriguez is so special. Like those last two wins. I mean, going into the Quadras fight before obviously Rungvisai, people were saying that was a big ass. Sort of up two weights. Put on an absolute clinic there, and then up against Rungvisai last time was just amazing. I don't know if there's anyone at fly or super fly that I would pick at the minute with confidence to beat Jesse Rodriguez. Sort of they had that era of like three kings of like Rungvisai, Chocolatito, and Estrada. You don't want to like get completely carried away with the hype and say, oh, he'll definitely beat them. But when he's already beat Rungvisai, granted maybe not the best version of him, like it's hardly just hype, is it? Eddie Hearn's obviously so keen on him. Can clearly see the sort of star potential there. You've got Chocolatito and Estrada fight on DAZN. It has to, surely that's what they'll do. I know he sort of expressed the desire to win world titles at flyweight as well as superfly. But sort of the differences in weight aren't that much at those weights where he could, especially at his age, go to superfly and then back to fly and what have you. But that would be like on mouthwatering fight him versus the winner of the Chocolatito Estrada trilogy.
Yeah, we'll have to see what that happens. They don't want to get too carried away, but that's a potential 2023 fight of the year contender sitting in advance. But so many things have to happen for that fight to happen. But we'll see. Staying on the Canelo Golovkin undercard, Ammo Williams against Kieran Conway, the US versus the UK. Is Ammo Williams a future world champion in your eyes?
Potentially, definitely, potentially. Last time out was the Katie Taylor card, wasn't it, against Charlie Booker? Booker was an undefeated fighter. Extensive amateur career, would have been in there with loads of ambition, and Ammo Williams just destroyed him in a round. I think Kieran Conway probably is definitely a step up for Ammo Williams. Like Conway's tough as anything. Obviously beat Metcalf recently, and I think he will give Williams stuff to think about. But you would have to favour Ammo Williams. He's more than capable of winning a world title, without a doubt. Still young, athletic, powerful, quick, good fundamentals, good jab. Much less gifted fighters than him have won world titles. So obviously getting the right fights at the right time, sort of what it comes down to. But definitely no reason he can't win a world title.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, one of the biggest prospects in world boxing is Ammo Williams. 11-0 now, big punch. I just think I'd have to agree. I do think he is a world champion. It's nice to see him face someone of relevance to us. So we've seen Kieran Conway against Ted Cheeseman as an example, JJ Metcalf as you mentioned. So that's for me. I know we've got Jesse Rodriguez on the undercard, but for me, that's the one I'm really looking forward to see Ammo Williams measures up against Kieran Conway. I think it's a very good test for him. Cool. This is packed show this week. We'll keeping on moving. Don't want to be here all night. Moving from Las Vegas to Bolton now. We are talking about Gavin Gwynn against Quade Woodruff. Two two guys from Wales fighting in Bolton. Not quite sure how that's happened, but here we are. Interested in this one. I think Quade Woodruff doesn't have the prettiest record, 12-6, but a good fight nonetheless. Picked up a title in his last fight. General thoughts on this fight, Danny, and what you see happening?
As you said, I don't know why it's not in Wales. Two Welsh fighters. I don't see it being the most entertaining fight necessarily. Both fighters sort of like they're tall, both very tall at the weight, both listed as 6 foot. I would say you've got to make Gwyn a favourite. He's bounced back well. His last few fights since the loss to the Tennyson stoppage. Good win against Luke Willis, particularly last time out to win the British title. Yeah, it doesn't make sense why you wouldn't have that in Wales, though. It's hard to get away from that. Like, imagine that in, like the Metro Point in front of even a couple of thousand Welsh fans, as opposed to putting it up in front of what's realistically going to be a few hundred people in Bolton.
Yeah,
doesn't make sense to me. As you say, Woodruff, the better fighter than his record suggests. You've been there with some really top fighters, like Luke Campbell was one that sort of sprung to mind from looking at his box track. But saying that, I do think you'd be surprised if Gwyn didn't come out on top.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's a I'm going to move past on from the Bolton thing because I don't really understand. I don't really understand it either. I was when I was doing research for this one, I was just kind of thinking about where the winner of this fight goes. It's always interesting to discuss that. I feel like the domestic lightweight scene now isn't what it used to be. I was just kind of having a look and I was a bit, that doesn't mean that can't change. But if the winner of this fight kind of wants to stay at domestic level, are there any names that reach out to you?
I couldn't agree with more with what you were saying there about the domestic level lightweight scene. Obviously, you've got Galahad and Maxie Hughes fighting in a few weeks. The winner of this isn't going to fight the loser of that. Like, I consider them both, and they'll consider themselves both well clear of domestic level, even the loser in that. If I win this, I know a lot of fighters want to win that British title outright, and that's 100% fair enough. It's would be a fantastic achievement as a boxer to be able to hold on to that belt. You've got to start thinking sort of financially and stuff as well. And all the domestic names are up at 140. Even the likes, so you've got Dalton Smith up there, he's got the British title. We probably do imagine him to be better than domestic level. Harlem Eubank, for example, Gavin Gwyn wins this, both with Wasserman. If Dalton Smith was to vacate that British title, which you'd imagine would happen probably sooner rather than later, that's a fantastic fight for the British title. I could headline the Channel 5 show easily. Would be a really good headliner as well. As you sort of hinted, it depends what the motivations are. Say if it is Gwyn who comes through, he's 32 now, especially at the lower weights, you are probably entering certainly the later stages. You're obviously not finished at that age, but sort of depends what the motivation is.
Yeah. There's so many routes to go down. I think I was at the weigh-in for Gavin Gwyn versus Luke, and Gwyn. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not an expert on weight, but Gwyn looked tight at the weight, I thought, at the weigh-in. So I'm a bit surprised he's fighting again at lightweight. Looking forward to seeing what he looks like at the weigh-in this week. But I think moving up wouldn't be a bad option if you consider if he beats Quade Woodruff, he's kind of defended his belts there, and he can maybe kind of say, look, I've won these belts, I've defended them, I'm going to move up now. The only name I'm going to throw at you is Ricky Burns. Ricky Burns still fighting, nearly 40 years old now, but I wonder if Gavin Gwyn versus Ricky Burns is a possibility. Any thoughts on that one?
I sort of considered that when I was doing a bit of research as well, but at his age, is Ricky Burns interested in fighting for a British title again? You know what I mean? Against Gavin Gwyn.
Yeah.
Like, he could beat him. It wouldn't be a massive payday at all. Whereas, like, if I'm Ricky Burns, he's a 3-weight world champion. I'm looking to cash out against an up-and-coming prospect. You know what I mean? A great name for them. A fight maybe you are going in there as a name to potentially be a name on the record, but let's face Ricky Burns, he's not going to be a world champion again. it's surely financially is his sole motivation at this point, and I don't think a fight with the winner of Gavin Quinn versus Woodcroft would, you know, tempt him in that sense. I wouldn't have thought. I don't obviously I don't know him. I don't know how he would
Yeah,
think about it. But
yeah, we'll see. I just feel like Burns, like he's not been very, he's not been very active the last couple of years. Hasn't fought for a little while, so yeah, I just don't know what remains for him in his career, and it's just if Gavin Gwynn does win, doesn't want to move up, I think that's a name, and that's kind of a fight that sells tickets, perhaps, rather than other fights. But we'll see. He's got to get past Craig Woodruff first. Just signing off the final fight of the week, Danny. A fight I'm looking forward to. It's very much an under the radar fight. Ellis Zorro versus Dex Spellman on the undercard of Bentley Morrison on Friday night. Ellis Zorro is the undefeated fighter, whereas Dex Spellman, 18-5, but he's lost to the likes of Shakan Pitters, Lyndon Arthur, Anthony Yard as well. Good fighters, not disgraced himself. He's moved up to cruiserweight. I think it's always interesting when someone moves up from light heavyweight to cruiserweight and how they look and how they carry so much extra weight. Looking to reviewing the betting odds for this one later in the week, but for me, this is a 50-50 fight and one that I'm struggling to pick a winner on, but interested to get your thoughts as well.
I was really impressed with El Zorro with that Boxer Series cruiserweight tournament. He sort of looked a class above the whole night. Obviously won all his fights relatively comfortably. And he strikes me as a fighter who will be suited to the longer format. He's more of a boxer than a brawler, definitely. And as you sort of said, and it's the same thing with like that Alma Williams, Kieran Conway fight. It's good when you've got a fighter who's like seen as a prospect or whatever, and then you've got someone who you know, and you know how impressed you'll be by a certain performance against that fighter. Like if he goes in there and stops Dex Spellman, like, you know, it would have been very impressive. And you can compare that to the fights. I know it's a different weight, but against Yard and Arthur and Pitters, as you say. I would fancy El Soro to win this fairly comfortably, if I'm honest. Just I think from what I've seen of him, again, this is based on one night of boxing, so you know, there could be doing Dex Spellman a disservice here, but I think he looks a level above Dex Spellman. He'll be keen, make a statement first show with Queensberry, sign away a new big promoter. So it is a fight that's gone under the radar big time, but really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think we'll end the show on a disagreement. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think Dex Spellman, the fight he had against Lyndon Arthur was close on a couple of the scorecards. The fight up until the stoppage against Yard, I thought was close. But yeah, I'm interested. I've not seen Dex Spellman. I know he's had a couple of fights at cruiserweight, but those have been against limited opposition. So I think this is a very, very intriguing one. Only over 8 rounds as well.
It's 8 rounds. That could probably suit Spellman a bit better, potentially.
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah. I think Zorro, obviously, I don't think he's fought past 6 rounds so far in his career. Spellman, he's gone 12 rounds with Lyndon Arthur, gone the distance various times. He's obviously had more fights than Ellis Zorro, so we'll see. Maybe we'll have to kind of have a fiver on it or something, just to spice things up a bit. Danny, thank you for joining me. It's been a bit of a marathon show this week. Hope we haven't bored people too much, but yeah, great to talk some boxing with you, and I will speak to you again soon.
No problem at all, mate. Enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, Asper.